Broadcasting live from inside the power band, this is The Blah. In this episode, everybody dies. I'm your host, the super awesome Mulvey, along with my super awesome friends, Prototrope Jarhigo.
Hello.
And the always super cool Algorithm.
Howdy.
Everything's okay. And this is Everything's Okay, Everything's Sweaty, or How I Learned to Stop Hating the Earth and Love Ohms.
Aw.
That's the title of the show.
Or how Ben learned to stop hating subtitles.
I actually started on subs, and then I switched to English with subs, and that was a very interesting experience.
Yeah.
Because what was said and what was flashing on the screen were pretty different. But I could not resist seeing an animated movie voiced over by Captain Picard and Commander Adama, which I will reference numerous times in this episode. We'll listen to Zeppelin and eat cheddar cheese. Nausicaa, to my ready room. Commander Adama, to my ready room. Tea, Earl Grey, hot.
Captain Picard.
Yeah, do it. I can't do a good, reasonably close Adama.
I'd like to introduce you to my close compatriot, the lovely Madam President, Nausicaa.
And her daughter, Nausicaa. And if I'm not mistaken, I couldn't find the English cast, but I do remember reading it like a year ago, and I'm pretty sure Shia LaBeouf plays the Pejite warrior.
Shia LaBeouf's third line was when I switched from English to Japanese.
Oh, give me a break.
Uma Thurman was the evil princess.
Yep.
Yes.
I said stop firing, you fools!
Yep. Mark Hamill is the mayor of Pejite.
Is he?
Yes. It's kind of a bit part, but
well, still. This is an old film. I was waiting for Uma to go, you can get a steak here, Daddy-O.
When Disney officially released all of the Studio Ghibli films here in the United States, they went through and did a thorough translation and got real people to do the voice acting. So
Oh yeah. Everything's okay. I mean, the end of this, I shouldn't blow my load just yet. Oh, hey.
Oh, Jesus.
Yeah, Miyazaki has had the same film score composer for all of the movies, so it's no surprise that the end of this movie features a very close facsimile to
Everything's Okay.
the Everything's Okay song.
Yeah, well, I actually just watched most of that video, Chad, that you posted up about the sound and the music.
Yeah, that was interesting.
Oh my God, it was so interesting. So the composer this was the first film that he did with Miyazaki, and this is also the non-Ghibli or Ghibli production.
I believe it's Ghibli.
It's Ghibli. Sorry, this is the non-Ghibli production that he did. One of his early films, and this is the first one I ever saw.
Is it?
Yeah, a long time ago. I don't know where I caught it, but I caught it, and I just was super into that whole toxic jungle thing, man. And then I looked it up a year or two ago, 3 years ago, and figured out that it was Nausicaa and it was a Miyazaki film and all that sort of thing.
Nice.
Kev, it probably was on HBO in the 80s, because I remember seeing this movie a long time ago, and I never saw it. It just kind of disappeared, and I didn't know what the hell it was, and I couldn't figure it out.
Yeah, me too, exactly.
And then I randomly saw Nausicaa, the Disney re-release of the Studio Ghibli version, and I was like, that's the movie. That's it.
Yes.
Did I imagine, I couldn't figure out if I had a premonition about a dream about the movie before it just seemed so weird. But and I've looked at it before and I haven't found anything, but recently I looked online, and as it turns out, this movie was released in the United States and cut to shit by I believe New World, cinema, and it was released in theaters and on HBO. So we saw like a really bastardized version of this, and it was called Warriors of the Wind.
Oh man, yes. And I honestly, when I was watching this last night, and then I actually had to finish it this morning, I just had a busy couple of days, and there were so many scenes in this that I was like, wait, I don't remember this, man, because I did actually watch it a couple of years ago, and there was a lot of scenes in this that I was like, I don't remember this being in the film at all. So they must have butchered it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, if you had seen it a couple years ago, it would have been this version of it. You just didn't remember.
Okay.
Yeah, because the version that I'm talking about like is not in existence anymore. It's like it got released on VHS, and there's copies of it out there, but it's impossible to find.
Yeah, I'd be curious to see it, just to see it.
Yeah, they cut like about a half an hour of footage out of the film and completely sort of just changed the plot to suit them, dubbed it over to suit whatever they kind of felt like doing. They changed a bunch of the names. They changed the movie poster to this ridiculous, god-awful thing. Like, it's pretty comical. But, nonetheless, like, when I saw it as a little kid, like, I was still, like, intrigued by the, the imagery and the idea of it. And, as it turns out, it didn't ruin it for me, because when I finally saw it later on in life, I was like, oh, this is it.
This is it.
Was the HBO thing your first exposure to this one, Benny? And if this wasn't your first Miyazaki, maybe you could touch on that a bit.
Yeah, that indeed was my first exposure to Miyazaki, although I had no idea it was Miyazaki at the time. It, however, was not my first exposure to anime. They aired some, again, bastardized versions of anime. Battle of the Planets was like a cut-up version of Gatchaman, I believe, and there was Starblazers as well. Those were both played like, I don't know, they would play them like when I was really little, like in the middle of the day or like after other cartoons would be on. But those would have been my first exposures to anime.
Can I just cut in here for 1 second, because I made a grievous error. Nausicaa was not my first exposure to Japanese animation. It was definitely G-Force.
Yes.
I would say on a film level, and certainly to Miyazaki, it was Nausicaa. But I watched G-Force religiously when I was a kid. And I don't, like Ben, I don't remember when it was on, but it was incredible. And I loved everything about G-Force.
Yeah, I was a big fan of anime when I was younger. I would watch, I mean, it was hard to find, and it was rare, and you'd have to watch some bizarre channel, at a bizarre hour in order to catch it. But
totally.
But I always enjoyed it. Yeah. But it's funny that the first run of Nausicaa, the Valley of the Wind in the United States was a bastardized version of it. And that like Battle of the Planets, G-Force was like a totally cut up bastardized version of the Japanese show. Where they completely like just changed the plot, and like they added Seven's Arc 7, and like they just did all this stuff to, I don't know, I guess try to make it more appealing for American audiences. But I mean, as a kid, I didn't know the difference, so it didn't matter to me then, like I still thought it was cool.
Yeah, my tiny little cul-de-sac is, I think I encountered a VHS of Ninja Scroll. That was, I think, my first anime, which is a really weird but interesting and bad and good movie. And then later on in high school, Toonami on the Cartoon Network with like Dragon Ball Z and Mobile Suit Gundam and all that stuff. Akira, obviously, probably much earlier than that. Ghost in the Shell. But I think Princess Mononoke might have been the first. So this was already after Miyazaki got picked up by Disney for distribution, and there was already decent dubbings of some of their stuff. So this would have been in the late 90s that I first encountered it.
Cool, man.
Cool, man.
So where do we start with this epic film? I mean, this is an important movie because this was outside the Ghibli Studios banner. Not outside of it. It was before he created Ghibli Studios, is my understanding. And
it was
the
his first time feature film.
Yeah, and it was the first time he worked with the composer, Japanese Quincy Jones, who would go on to do all of Miyazaki's films.
Joe Hisaishi.
Exactly right. Joe. So this is a monumental film, and a really good one too.
Yeah, my understanding is like he did the Castle of Cagliostro, which is his first featured directorial debut, which was like a Lupin the Third movie, which is pretty good. But similar to what you were saying, Benny, this was kind of his first film that he created himself and directed himself.
Right.
So it really kind of is his debut film.
Yes.
And similar to what you said, Kev, my understanding is that the manga for this and the film essentially were able to give him the cachet to launch Ghibli with his co-founders. So it's quite a monumental film for him.
Absolutely. So we all had a but we all had a debate about subtitles and how to watch this movie, and this sort of extended from Generation War because that was all in German and we had to watch it in subtitles, which was not a thing that Jarhigo was super into. This movie was in either Japanese with English subtitles, or it had the English dub, and I got through a few minutes of it on the subtitles, and I had to switch to English dub, but I kept the subtitles on, and it was interesting because what was said in the subtitles was pretty different from what they were saying on the screen. But I could not resist watching this with Captain Picard and Commander Adama and Shia LaBeouf and Uma Thurman, which is why I switched back over to English.
Fair enough. Is that the reason you switched, or you just got getting annoyed and wanted to listen to it in English?
No, that's the reason I switched, because I missed, Captain Picard has such an iconic voice, and it's really difficult to not listen to him. Lord Yupa.
There's no reason not to watch the dub version of this.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'll provide one in a moment, for me at least.
Well, irrelevant.
Irrelevant. Like I kind of disagree, for me at least. Like I totally understand the lack of interest in subtitles generally and how annoying they can be, and I share some of that annoyance in the sense that like it is frustrating that you can't watch the movie while reading subtitles. Like it's completely valid. And as long as the dubs are handled well, which, you can't really argue that the cast here it's like a fantastic dub cast, and I think they did take a lot of care to have it be as accurate as possible, et cetera, et cetera. So like you can't fault it. But I actually found exactly the opposite watching this, where I decided to watch it in English dub with the subtitles on, and then in like 10, 15 minutes in, I turned the subtitles off because I was like, it's fucking close enough. And I've watched it half dozen times in each
format.
Yeah, but by the time, all the main characters were in, and specifically when Shia LaBeouf like chimed in, I found that recognizing the voices, like I found it pulled me out of the story a bit, because the voices are so iconic that for me it just kind of, I was constantly like trying to listen to these actors act as opposed to enjoying the story. So like it's super minor, but for me it was, I ended up switching back to Japanese just because I really wanted to connect with the story. So I'm sure that, Ben's eyes just rolled like to the point where there's fucking 2 bars instead of eyeballs, like a slot machine. But
very much like an anime freeze frame.
Yeah.
And now you have like the red cheeks and the little sweat drip like at the corner.
Yeah.
I mean, to each their own, dude. But for me, like you were saying that the dub pulled you out of it. For me, the subtitles always pull me out of it. They always break the spell for me. You know what I mean? It's very hard for me to remain engaged in the visual aspect of things when I'm constantly like, I mean, I guess some people can really just take the whole thing in at once. But for me, my eyes are always darting down to the subtitles, and it's constantly pulling me out of what I'm watching.
Yeah, that's fair.
It's almost like when you watch it with subtitles, you got to watch it twice. Once so you can read it and you can understand what's happening in a more full way. But you're right, Ben. Your eyes either end up darting down, or you're just kind of got the action going on and your greater focus, whereas your main focus is on the word. So you're not really taking it in visually. I actually enjoy the subtitles because I want to hear, certainly on Generation War, like the subtitling in the original German I thought it was important. So I liked that it was in German, but I get both sides of this, and I'm literally split down the middle on it. I like watching the dubs, and I also like watching with subtitles as well.
I think we talked about when we were having that conversation the other week. This whole show is about subtitles versus dub.
Every anime conversation in the history ever.
I think we said that the caveat to dub versus subtitles was it's kind of okay for animation, but when it comes to actual live action movies, it's kind of ridiculous to watch it in a dub.
Generally, yeah.
Yes. Yeah. I agree.
Yep. Because of the time this came out, I think most of my first viewings of any of the anime and Studio Ghibli films I would have seen in the dub version first. So, I would have watched the dub, gotten that first experience, and then gone back and watched it a few times, including with the subs and stuff. So it is definitely the case that you need to watch subtitled movies multiple times to really get it in terms of being able to watch the actual stuff instead of reading. So it's a perfectly fair point.
And really absorb the entirety of the story, Chad. Yeah.
Yeah. But I mean, being the editor of this show and being 40 plus episodes in, I'm definitely fully aware of how much of a snobby bitch I am, because I just listen to myself complain and like shit talk everything all the time. So I'm totally going to own it, and I'm completely fine with eye rolls, but I changed to the subs halfway through.
I'm sure lots of people will agree with you. Personally, I would rather subtitles than a shitty dub, but in a case like this where, there's some pretty great voice acting, and I really feel like since Disney took on doing the Miyazaki films, there's been some pretty close work with Studio Ghibli to make sure that the translation is as close as possible, or at least carries through the spirit. And, I think if they've gone through that much trouble, then it's good to watch the dub. It's not like a lesser thing, to be looked down at.
No. But in one like this, I mean, come on, dude. John Luck Pickard, Commander Adama, come on.
It's pretty good.
So good.
I kind of feel almost like you could interchange a dub and a sub viewing with, like watching a commentary track, like you watch it when you already are really intimately aware of the film. So if you're a person that really is really into dubs, then you watch the subs when you're really intimately familiar with the film, and vice versa. If you're only into subtitles, then you watch the dub when you're intimately aware of it. But
yes,
I don't know. I kind of feel like any fan of a movie would be willing to watch it in any format they can get to glean any new nugget they could find. So it's almost a moot point in a way.
Strike the whole conversation from the record.
Yeah.
All right, so moving on from the subdivision of subs and dubs, what do we want to talk about first?
I think talking about the tunes and the first impressions of the first scene is probably an interesting place to go.
Well, the opening is great in this movie, and that is actually why I switched back over to English, because I knew it was John Luck Pickard, and I wanted to hear his voice because it's so damn good. And, he's sort of picking through the detritus of life ruined by the toxic jungle. But the toxic jungle is only there because humans have ruined the earth, which is no surprise to anyone. And it's just fantastic. Like this, the sort of the lone kind of gunslinger with the horse and the pack mule, with his wide-brimmed hat pulled down and his cloak cinched up tightly around his neck, and his ridiculous mustache. Should we talk about the mustaches now or later?
The animated character was based on Sam Neill in Tombstone, but the voice was Jean-Luc Picard.
That would be Sam Elliott, friend.
Sam Elliott, sorry.
Yes.
This movie, just quickie, this movie is definitely in hot competition with Tombstone with the mustaches.
I agree, Ben. Ben, I could even posit that if Sam Elliott's mustache in its hulkinated form that we discussed in the Tombstone episode would look
just like Lord Yupa's.
Yupa. Lord Yupa.
Lord Yupa's mustache would have like a small like shreds of pants attached to the mustache, Hulk style.
Yes, I like that a lot.
In exploding mustache style.
By that rationale, would the mustache also have to be green?
Yes, and it would be wearing a very small pair of pants that were purple, but you could see the upper part of the mustache, and then when the thing hulked out, the pants would rip, and the mustache would, like, unfurl.
But to be fair, it could be a hyper-intelligent mustache and be gray, so, you know, it could work.
Hyper-intelligent? I love it, dude.
I think that cul-de-sac just murdered us all in our sleep.
I think Ben's right about that.
Extreme prejudice.
That is a rare, folks, a rare murder, death, kill.
Totally.
Death by mustache.
I do enjoy how Lord Yupa, a.k.a. Sam Elliott's mustache, a.k.a. Grey Hulk, a.k.a. Jean-Luc Picard ass was saved by Nausicaa. That was I like that. That was cool.
Yeah, it was. I gotta say, one of the things that I just absolutely love in this movie is that goddamn glider. I just think it is so cool. And the way she works that glider is just incredible, man. And I mean, one of the things that I thought was kind of funny and ridiculous was like, you know, as I got to the end, it was like, okay, here she goes. She's going to jump out of another airplane. Like, she's constantly jumping off the glider, off of airplanes. Like, the acrobatics are insane, the things that she does on and off the glider and the various different aircraft. But the glider was just so cool. I cannot state that enough.
Definitely. I love that they established from the very beginning that Nausicaa is a badass, you know?
Yes.
It's not like she has an arc where, like, you know, she's just an innocent princess and then suddenly she's, like, you know, doing backflips off of a glider and, you know, like taking people out, conversing with ohms and all this stuff. It's like from the very beginning, that's how she is. So I thought that was really great. And it's a testimony to Miyazaki, you know. It's no surprise to anyone that Miyazaki has a lot of female protagonists and they're always great, you know. Nausicaa, no exception.
Nearly all of them, right, Ben?
Yes, I believe actually all of them are.
Yeah, I think all of them as well. I'm a huge fan of that too, man, because I'm a big advocate for that. So I love that he puts these incredibly strong, not cliche, not stereotypical females in these lead roles, and that what you just said, Ben, is indicative of that. You know, she's a badass straight away. Like, she's not wearing, you know, dainty dresses and then all of a sudden she transforms into a badass. She was born a badass.
Yes, she was.
Best part.
Yeah, Miyazaki's great with that. Not a Mary Sue among the crew.
Ooh, I like it. Yeah, the glider is the thing is sick. I want one. I want one of those damn gliders. It's so damn cool.
Did you see that video I sent to you guys?
No.
Check it out for a minute. Open it up and check it out because I want you to see it, and I'll cut the dead air out.
Wait, you want me to pull a Kev? Just abandon the podcast to watch something?
Yeah, pull a Kev. Check this video out. It's worth your time.
Wait. I just want to confirm that you're encouraging me to watch something on the internet whilst we're doing the podcast.
I'm officially encouraging Kev to Kev.
I don't have to watch the whole thing, do I?
Nope.
I mean, they've gone and done it.
Yeah, these dudes, like, I just saw it today that these engineers made it over the course of however many years and, like, wouldn't take an official, like, endorsement because they're like, yeah, like, if somebody dies on this thing, I don't want anybody getting mad at Ghibli for it. So we just wanted to make it because it's fucking awesome. And, like, it's, like, fair play to these dudes or guys and gals for putting it together because it's pretty cool.
Yeah, that is really cool. It's amazing how close it is. Like, even scale wise, it's like really fucking close.
Yeah. It'd be fun to fly on, I reckon.
Dude, that thing is exactly the glider from Nausicaa. When I opened the video, I was like, what is this stupid ad that's playing for this airplane company? and then I realized that I was watching an actual nerd flying on the Nausicaa glider. Absolutely awesome.
Some turbofan engineers made one, so I thought it was cool.
There you go, Kev. Theoretically, you could have one.
You can have one, man. We'll buy you one.
Yeah, we should all buy one when we start recouping our fat stacks from the show.
That's it, folks. We're going to start a GoFundMe for Kev's Nausicaa glider.
But I'm not going to lie on mine. Mine's going to have a Segway attachment. I'm just going to stand on a Segway on it.
Dude, yes, exactly. I love it.
But I'm with you, man. The glider's amazing, and the first like 5 minutes of the movie are really immersive. And I saw something that was like, I don't know. I don't think it takes away from Nausicaa, but it does. I'm taking one for the team here. It does take away from Star Wars Force Awakens.
Ooh.
Because somebody was like, yeah, so the first 5 minutes of Nausicaa is essentially Rey's introduction in Force Awakens. And it's like, yeah, you know what? You're dead right. They totally did a homage to Nausicaa with Rey, climbing around, scrapping the Star Destroyer and sliding out on a sled versus flying out on a glider.
They did, but she didn't go on to save Lord Yupa off of a glider afterwards,
No, that's true.
Or like have this insane like communication session with the Ohms and save the entire planet.
Whoa.
Well, Jarhiga's getting pissed because I'm jumping.
Yeah, you just jumped straight to the end of the movie there, Chief.
Yeah, jump death. Sorry.
Spoiler alert.
Yeah, I never drew the parallel there, but I do prefer Nausicaa's sort of whimsical journey through the toxic forest and finding the Ohm shell and prying out the eye and taking it home. Like, I love that.
Yeah, really, really cool.
Yeah, the gunpowder around it thing.
Yeah, it's great. And she's like then just sitting under it, and the spores are coming down her like snow.
Yeah, it really sets the tone really perfectly.
Yeah.
Absolutely, man. I love that whole sequence. It was just fantastic, especially like what you just said, Ben. The whole sitting underneath the ice shell with the snow spores coming around, like falling all around her. It was gorgeous. There's some really gorgeous imagery in this.
Yeah, absolutely. It really reminded me a lot of similar to when we were talking in, I think it was Fifth Element, but it really reminded me a lot of old Moebius and French comics, even though I know it is very Miyazaki-esque. Like a lot of the world building was really reminiscent of that, and it might have been something that was really attractive to me the first time I encountered it, because I would have been aware of all the old heavy metal stuff still.
Yeah, it is reminiscent of that. But in general, all those background paintings, the matte paintings, are just sensational. They're so beautiful.
Oh, stunning. Absolutely stunning. And I love how you can get like, a Blu-ray of this stuff now, and in theory, like, put it in your computer, snag a screenshot, and it would just be like you could print it out on canvas and have a giant painting in your wall. Like there's so much detail in it.
You just gave me an idea.
You should totally do it.
I'm gonna end up dumping some cash after watching this, because not only do I need to now print out by do exactly what you just said, but I realized I never read the manga, so I have the box set in a shopping cart right now.
Oh, fuck yeah, dude.
Ooh.
Waiting to pull the trigger.
Yeah, I was looking into that. I had never read the manga either.
I need to dive into that lore a little bit.
Absolutely.
I started going down a rabbit hole last night, and in the name of doing research for this, and then sort of realized that I was blowing the research that I should be doing by diving into some of this stuff. But, what are you going to do?
Fall in love with the lore is what you're going to do.
What indeed? Yeah, exactly. I need more lore.
Yes.
I didn't realize that this film had a manga, or at least I forgot it, and then I didn't know much about the manga, and it was very similar to Akira, where the manga for Akira I bought hard copies of in the early 2000s, and like it's like something like a 20 volume thing, or I can't remember exactly. But the first like 3 volumes is the movie, and then it goes on for like 20 more volumes, and it just gets crazy. And from what I understand, it's quite similar. Like the first 3 volumes of however many, like a dozen or whatever, is this film, and then it kind of goes quite a bit further. So I'm super curious about what they do and how they tell that story.
Yeah, definitely. Considering that it was conceived by Miyazaki himself, it's pretty cool.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't know if you came across it in your digging for info, but I saw that he had 2 projects he was pitching after Castle of Cagliostro, and they both got denied. And they basically said, like, we're only going to make something if it's an existing manga property, so come back with something that we can get the rights to. And since he couldn't, he's just like, well, I'll make a manga and make a property, and then we'll make the movie, you know? So, like, he made the manga, or started the manga, in order to get the movie going, or at least that's what I was reading about. So that's an interesting way to get it up and running.
That's funny, because I had gotten contrary information where he was reluctant to do the movie version because he didn't think the manga could be done justice on film. Like,
yeah, right.
I don't know which is the truth there, but
who knows? Probably a blend of the two.
It's interesting either way, for sure.
Yeah, and interesting that the film, you know, came out when there was only a few volumes of the manga out, and so the later volumes would have been much later on, and his opinions would have potentially changed and stuff. So, but I'm jealous of the shopping cart, and I'm looking forward to hearing what you think about it.
Yeah, I mean, if you want to do a dive into some of the lore, I just dove headfirst into the Nausicaa wiki, and there's all kinds of great information on there. So,
yeah, okay,
if anybody's looking for some deeper dive after, and you don't have the manga, that's a great place to start, I think.
Yeah, absolutely.
Speaking of deeper dives and interesting lore, it really reminds me, like, I've seen this obviously dozens of times or whatever, but it really reminds me of your bringing Prospect to the table about a year ago, and the extra little bits of lore there.
In terms of what? Just the lore?
In terms of, like, a planet that you can't be out and about in without a mask, and it's kind of like it consumes you if you take your mask off and you die, and it's different, obviously, but it has a kind of a similar vibe.
Definitely. I hadn't thought about that. That's cool.
Yeah, very cool. I wonder how many times in this episode we're going to say the word lore.
Malore.
Oh, Jarhigo. Node. Buckets of blood. Rape. Blood.
I like how we were able to actually have an entire Game of Thrones episode in the middle of this episode, and now it's done.
I love it. It's done. It's totally over.
So, rating Game of Thrones, I give it a fuck that shit, they ruined it, and back to Nausicaa.
Yeah, algorithm score for the folks at home is so low on Game of Thrones. It's actually it's not a negative number. It's a quantum negative variable number.
Yeah, my rating is so low that it collapsed in on itself, and it's a giant black hole.
Exactly. You have to go exist on Planck scale to look at the score for algorithms Game of Thrones score.
Yeah. So the only person that actually knows what the score is friend of the show, Paul Rudd.
I love all these friends of the show that we have that we don't actually have.
Shh. Don't worry, I'll cut that out.
No, we're paying it forward.
Yeah. Paul Rudd's on my vision board, Kev, okay?
He may not be our friend, but we're his friend.
There you go. I like it.
Okay, so since we're really, really just kind of laser focused this week, the thing that I remembered the most, we already talked about how Miyazaki was a huge proponent of super strong female protagonists, leads, what have you. But he also used a lot of environmental themes in his films. And this one, absolutely accentuates that point. And the whole idea of humans having basically destroyed the earth with their careless foolishness. And now we're 1,000 years into the future from that point, and the world is sort of, I don't know if overrun is the right word. It's somewhat hard to get a sense of how much of the world has been infected by the toxic jungle or sea of decay, depending on how you watch this movie. But I really liked that idea of these toxic spores kind of cleansing the earth, number one, and number two, sort of as a side job, cleansing the earth of the humans who are clearly the kind of scourge of the planet. That's one of the messages you get from watching this story. I loved those dynamics throughout the movie. I think that was probably my favorite part, that plus the glider, so the toxic jungle, that whole idea of that, especially Chad, you and I working outside with plants for as many years as we did, like, I find that all very fascinating. And I also thought it was very cool that Nausicaa had, and this is something I did not remember from my previous viewings, was that she had that secret garden growing room in the castle where she had taken the spores and grown them with clean water, and they had grown and flourished, but without their toxic qualities. So, it clearly shows that the pollution that was in the soil was what made the toxic jungle the toxic jungle. It's kind of really, really interesting stuff, especially for anybody that's into ecology or soil. I can't believe I'm going to say this. Ecology, soil science, or lawnology. Hey.
That's amazing. No, it's good. It's good.
Good times, man. Sorry, I thought I had a really good thing going there with the toxic jungle, and then I pretty much just ruined it myself. Anyway, so comments on that?
I don't know. I just kind of want to leave it, let you just slowly die.
All right. So, what are some of your guys' high level thoughts about this?
I think your ecology comment's really interesting because, at one point, it kind of reminded me of a comment someone made back in the day about the Neverending Story, the first one, where they were blown away with the bad guy, quote unquote, in the movie being the nothing, and how genius they thought having nothing as the bad guy was. And similarly, the toxic mold giant insect as what you think is the bad guy at first is a really interesting way to approach, the world fighting against humans via cleaning pollution and stuff. So I'm totally on board that motorcycle with you in terms of the ecological thing.
Right on. Ben, do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I don't really have a comment on the ecology thing. I think you summed it up quite well. Otherwise, this is one of my favorite Miyazaki films, period. If not my favorite. Yeah, it's up there. Top 2, top 3.
It's pretty fucking high up there, yeah.
I love the lore. I love the artwork. I love the ohms. I don't know, man. There's so much to love. I love the tech. The tech is amazing. The gunship. You were commenting about the Nausicaa's wing, which is amazing. But I always loved that gunship that actually sort of looks like the barrel of a gun. Yeah,
Yes, I did. Yeah.
So cool. And, I love this dubbed version with Patrick Stewart and with Edward James Olmos and the gang. There's so much to love here. It's one of my faves.
Yeah. One of the things that always jumped out at me watching this one was how much it reminded me of Final Fantasy, and maybe specifically later Final Fantasy VII, for example. And I stumbled across a tidbit that was the creator of Final Fantasy was super stoked with this movie, and kind of Chocobo stuff came out of the Yupa's Lord Yuba or Yupa or whatever, his chicken horse things. So it definitely got a Final Fantasy vibe on it.
No, they were like terror birds, from Days of Yore, that could only run, they couldn't fly.
Yeah, I love it. I love that they have their own little gas masks. It's great.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, and to tie kind of those two thoughts together, I kind of really feel like the world building that he is able to provide to this and a lot of his other movies is just world class, exceptional. Some of the best world building ever in any form. Miyazaki is just phenomenal at it.
I mean, just the names alone of all the different factions and various different peoples across the planet, the Pedgites and the what's the other one? It starts with a T. I can't even formulate it in my head right.
I always thought it was the Talmekians, but it's apparently the Taromekians.
Oh, really?
Okay, the Taromekians.
I forget where I heard it, but I remember hearing while researching this, somebody in an interview saying something along the lines of watching Miyazaki's films is like watching somebody else's dream.
Yes, absolutely.
Wow. That's an astute comment. Yes, very cool.
That's a perfect comment.
Very cool. Any other high-level thoughts? Algorithm? Ben? No?
I'm going to throw something out there and let me know if it's a good time for it or not. But it's kind of high level in the sense of high level Miyazaki. But have you guys ever heard of or seen The Kingdom of Dreams and Madness, the documentary about Miyazaki?
No.
Nope.
That's worth checking out. It's kind of a documentary that was filmed at Ghibli Studios around the time that The Wind Rises, kind of one of his more recent films, came out. And it's a super interesting kind of like glimpse into his process. And Similar to kind of like it reminded me of it because it's called the Kingdom of Dreams and Madness, and you were saying it's like being in his dreams, and his process was super fascinating in the sense that a lot of the times he just starts drawing and doesn't really storyboard the story out and just kind of makes it up as he goes along, and I thought that was a super fascinating thing.
I love that. Super, like a hyper organic approach, man. Like we were kind of talking about that the other night, Chad. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's just kind of an interesting nugget, and if you haven't seen it, it's not really worth digging into, but it kind of might help us transition because one of the things that I absolutely love about Miyazaki is the hand-drawn animation, especially like the perspective changes and the way that he and his animators are able to bring these things to life without CG in the early movies that he put together. It's just like exceptional animation.
Absolutely. It's beautiful.
And like similar to what you were saying with the gunships and stuff, like those giant airships and them moving through the air, and it's remarkable how realistic such fantastical stuff can be made to seem.
Absolutely. And just kind of going, like, let's just stick it on the visuals for a second. Like, I really enjoyed, we talked about the glider, the gunship, but the larger ships had very kind of World War II B-2 bombers kind of look to them, like elements of that, rather. Like, they kind of had like the gun ports and the bubble ports with the guns, and like just some of the structure, like the bridges of the ships very much look like those old World War II bombers.
Like Memphis Belle, B-17 stuff.
Exactly. Yeah, B-17, sorry, yeah. Like the big ones, the flying fortresses from World War II. Like those were, I really dug that. And it was a couple of the different ships that had that look to it. So he did a really great job of combining, elements from days of yore with, some sort of traditional stuff. And there was just a good mix of elements that made for some interesting visuals. Like at the end when they're kind of, the evil princess Uma Thurman is attacking the sort of the last, I don't want to say stronghold, but I guess that's what it was, of the people of the valley. They start marching forward, and it's like essentially a bunch of guys with shields and swords behind a row of tanks. Like it was an interesting mix in that way, and then there are times when we're seeing sword fights, when Lord Yuba finally decides to freaking kick some ass, he does just that with a long sword and a short sword. And it's a total sword fight. And I like that mix of styles that he pulled in from various different places and combine them together to make, like you guys said, a rich, rich world.
Yeah. It's sort of like a smattering of some World War II tech. Even like some of the tanks and some of the uniforms reminded me more of like maybe World War I kind of stuff. But then you have that mixed with sort of the medieval stuff, But it's not really medieval stuff. It's like, ceramic armor and ceramic swords and, some of the lore that I read back into, like, with the age preceding the 7 Days of Fire, it was referred to as like the ceramic age or the ceramic era or whatever. So like, a lot of their tech had something to do with that. So it's really, it's like an interesting combination of, things that are familiar with some, fantasy elements thrown in. Very cool stuff. The guns are almost like musket-like, like.
Yeah. Yeah, I didn't realize it, but it doesn't really make it clear in the film, but similar, Benny, I was looking at some of the other lore, maybe the manga lore, ooh, weird, the manga lore stuff.
Did you just?
You did.
I did, and I was just like, huh? What Mangalores, dude?
Yeah, Mangalores from Fifth Element, dude. Nice. I like it. Which
has a similar vibe, but the ships were like a couple hundred years old. I didn't really pick up on the fact that the ships were a rare commodity and how, like the gunship, for example, in the Valley of the Wind is kind of the only reason why it's its own kingdom, because they have one of the last remaining gunships and stuff. So I really like that little sprinkling of lore that I never was aware of before checking in on the manga a bit.
Wow, I didn't pick up on that either.
Well, I don't think you can pick up on it because it's just not in the films, but it's an interesting, it makes more sense in the sense of the ships and why they're weird and bulbous and look like they've been repaired 1 billion times and that kind of stuff.
Right.
Did you stumble across any of that in your diggings, Benny?
Yes, I did stumble across exactly that stuff, but I don't have anything else to add to it.
That's all right, man. What did you guys think about the sort of the giant warriors? Because I really like, I love really unique lore. I love like great world building. And, as we said, Miyazaki does a great job of that here. But the only thing that I just didn't really get how it fit was the giant warriors. Like they seem to be like literal living beings, but they could like fire lasers out of their mouths and like I don't know. I didn't really understand that element, where they came from and how that played into it. I know they talk about it in like a little flashback in the film, but I was still not very clear about that. Can you guys add to that?
They're bioweapons.
So manufactured.
Yeah, they're manufactured, obedient bioweapons. I think the manga has some different takes on it. I think they have more agency in the manga, whereas it's portrayed more like, you tell them what to do and they do it kind of a thing. I think they have more personality in the manga, but as far as I understand, they are like bioweapons. They are engineered, created by humans. You can see what they're capable of doing. But I love that. There's something so menacing about them, and there's something really cool about seeing the skeletons and the heads popping up out of like the toxic forest, I love all that stuff. I think it's great.
It's like instant lore.
Yeah.
Did you get the kind of like, not Godzilla, but like, there's like the Godzilla franchise, obviously, and kind of like the Gundam large mech suit thing, like, and you could kind of see how maybe a Godzilla style thing is an allegory for the atom bomb, World War II kind of apocalypse stuff. Did you kind of catch a vibe that the giant warrior was playing around with the idea of the apocalypse, or with kind of like using Godzilla-y stuff as inspiration, even though it's got nothing to do with it? Like vibe from any of that stuff?
No, I didn't get a vibe like that at all. And I didn't get like a world-ending kind of bomb situation either.
But I think that's what they were, wasn't it? There's like the 7 days of fire was just those things going around blasting the earth. That's kind of what I thought it was.
Yeah, they're like this world's weapons of mass destruction, essentially. So yeah, there is.
Okay.
I don't think Miyazaki intended for there to be like a direct relationship to like atom bombs and nukes, but yeah, that's essentially what they are. They're like the ultimate weapons. Like when humanity went to war with each other, they created these things and sent them, out to destroy each other and destroy the world. So
I kind of meant more in the sense of like, Japan is the only nation that had atom bombs dropped on it. So like they have a very interesting cultural history with it and like the processing of it. And I remember I tried to find it when we talked about it in another episode, but I remember reading this like really interesting article about, Japan is the only nation that actually had an apocalypse, and a lot of the creative elements that came out from the generations. And like, it was talking about how, manga and anime in the vein of the sci-fi stuff, like, tapped into that apocalypse. And I've always found that thread fascinating, even though it might only be one random dude's idea. So that's kind of more what I was getting at with that. But
Interesting.
Okay.
Let me ask another question.
Yes.
So in the beginning of the film, or in the first part of the film, rather, they talk about how, the Valley of the Wind is protected from the toxic spores by the winds that come off of the sea. Okay. And then later on, when we're back in the valley and they're about to, basically destroy the building that holds all the residents of the valley, she's trying to push the small ohm away from the lake. And she says it's a lake. It's an acid lake. So I was really kind of confused. I was like, oh, I thought this was an ocean, but no, now it's a lake and it's acid filled. Like what was up with that? Or did I miss something?
No, it's a lake. I mean, it'd be interesting to see a map of the territory, which I don't think I ever have. But I was under the impression that the two are different things. Like the ocean, like that actually was like an acid lake, not the ocean.
Yeah, I kind of took them as two different, distinct geographic areas, and
yeah.
Okay, all right.
And whether or not the like ohm stampede is what stopped the wind, I never really understood why the wind stopped, and it was clearly a very major thing. But I don't know. It's such a fantastical scene that you just kind of a fantastical film that I just kind of let the thing roll and didn't get too caught up.
Well, yeah. I mean, we don't have to like explain why everything happens. I mean, it happens. But Obaba pretty much kind of explains in the charge of the ohms that, the wind has stopped and she can feel the rage in the air, and it's the rage of the planet. So, the planet as an actual living thing that can, do things and feel things and project energy is very present in the film. And I think that was why the wind stopped. It was like because of the ohm charge, and the ohms and the toxic jungle and the insects, they're all part of the planet. Again, this is yet another story, and probably one of the earlier stories where this idea was put forth of human beings just not fitting and just being a scourge on the planet, whereas everything else lives in harmony in the planet. The same idea with Avatar. Sorry, I'm really sorry, but it's true. It's like
it's Agent Smith in the Matrix saying that we're a virus. I get it. Yeah, totally.
The idea of Gaia. So anyway, that's all I got to say about that.
I think it's a good point, though. Like, we are the first species that we're aware of that's stepped outside of, the ecological sphere and started really, really messing things up. So it makes perfect sense that, we could create the allegory that we're virus-like or a disease on the Earth. So I think that's probably why it resonates so strongly that this world is, has a grain of truth to it.
Absolutely.
Well, I don't know. I just don't like thinking about it that way. I don't think it's actually what it is. I don't think everything is played out yet. If anything, we're a virus to ourselves because everything that we're doing is going to kill us, not
the
planet. The planet will adapt. So, I think we're probably in like a harmful phase, but I think, the story's not over yet. And it's possible that either we're going to be our own demise, or perhaps we'll end up being the stewards of the planet. Perhaps we'll end up undoing all the harm that we've done. And, I don't know. Anyways,
here's hoping.
I see it. I see us as part of the story. Like whatever we're doing, seemingly going away from nature is perhaps something that nature needs, or it's perhaps it's part of nature.
Sure.
It's just an extension of it,
Yeah, I agree. I mean, here's hoping that we pull our heads out of our asses and figure it out. For sure. I'm 100% on board with that.
Well, we'll be the first to go if we don't, so.
That's it. We will definitely know.
Let's move on to the sound and the music.
Yeah, that video I shared really made me realize how little I had paid attention, but how obvious a contribution the music and score to all of his films are.
Yeah, the score in this has some really neat stuff. There's some really wacky, like, just like a dude wailing on a synthesizer playing like arpeggios, like, like there's some really kind of kooky stuff that I don't feel like I've seen in a lot of his other movies. So, I recognize a lot of the score as being similar to some of the stuff that's been in other of his films, but there's some really unique stuff in this. Some really fun, kooky, like Rick Wakeman just like going nuts.
Yes. I loved those, man. The kooky like 80s synth freakouts were just great. And then they're like, sort of peppered in amongst like this kind of orchestral music, but one of the things that was cool, in that video that we watched, and we'll link this up for the folks at home in the show notes, was how the composer would, and this is what I was trying to say in The Fifth Element. The composer would use these sounds, notes, as noises as well, like for some of the things that were happening in the story, which I really dig. And I really dug that in The Fifth Element. That was very present in The Fifth Element as well. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I'm recalling that same scene from the YouTube video talking about kind of, I forget exactly the wording that was used, but it was essentially saying that punctuating moments with the sound, but not having the dialogue really making it clear that the punctuation was happening. It was quite clever, and I don't recall having encountered that often in other stuff. And so, the scene cuts. The example was in the opening sequence where Nausicaa finds the ohm shell in the first minute of the film, where it's her on her face, and she's like, "Oh wow, an ohm shell," or whatever. And it cuts to the ohm shell, and there's this really weird sound. It's like a kind of a sitar sound, I think, like a chime of a sitar. and how it kind of really makes it clear that something important is happening without having a narrator be like, that is a really important shell. It's just like clever use of sound. And
Right.
I kind of get the feeling that's the bit you were talking about, Kev.
Yeah. Something, it's like that. There was, yes, that plus I think what I was talking about specifically was utilizing music. Man, this is really hard to put into words, to make sort of a sound profile, for various different things in a film. And Eric Serra did a really cool job with that in The Fifth Element. It's like you hear it over and over. There's just those bizarre noises that go along with the music, and you hear different ones when like different characters come on the screen, like the Mondashi ones and, whatever. So, it seemed like he was doing something similar in this score as well. Is I guess what I was driving at. Plus what you just said as well. Some really interesting choices. And then talking about the sound design for a second, it was really good. They had a lot of like the effects and everything that they had for all the various different things they needed. Some of them were very classic Japanese animation, and some of them were very practical. Like a glove hand picking up something. You could hear the glove and you could hear the proper rustling of picking something up. I noticed that stuff because it's sort of what I do, but I really appreciate that, when it's really good. And this movie was odd. It was like sometimes it was really good and sometimes it was not so much. And I also found, and this ties in with the sound design, is that the English cast, so Patrick Stewart and Olmos, like there are times when they sound like they're recording inside a tin can, and you can sort of palpably hear that. And I wasn't nuts about that, but that's just my probably oversensitive ear.
Yeah, sure.
But beyond that, like the sound design and the voice acting was good. It was really good.
Yeah, in regards to the sound design, there were some things that were very stock kind of anime.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah.
Like those gleaming kind of sounds, like the
Japanese gleaming sounds.
Gleaming sound. I can't remember. What everybody knows what I'm talking about, I think.
Yeah, like when you fire, like when they do a move or there's a sword, or even like when the guns, like the rounds are firing out of a gun. Sometimes it's like that,
kind of like a swing kind of thing that happens. Yeah,
swing.
Yeah. Exactly that. Actually,
like that.
Like that was so fucking good. Yes,
it was so close. You thought you were in the movie again, Chad.
Yeah,
I did. But one thing that really stuck out to me was the sound of the ohms, and you kind of get it en masse when you see, a bunch of them. But when she's communicating with the little baby ohm or whatever, you get this kind of like this crackling sound mixed with like a kind of sounds like a fly buzzing. Like it's really neat. It's really interesting. It's like what you would expect it to sound like.
Definitely.
So that being a positive example.
Absolutely, man.
Well, similar to kind of what you've mentioned many a time, or the two of you have mentioned many a time, like a good score a lot of times blends well with the material. And I think like the crackling sound, it seems so obvious when you hear it, but it would have been really probably difficult to find that sound, and how genius it was to come up with it is a great example.
Yeah.
Were you going to say something a second ago, Benny?
I just had another thought of another cool sound from the movie, and it's from the same scene when the baby Ohm reaches out with his little gold tendrils.
Oh yeah,
and it's like probing Nausicaa's wounds, and it's making this sort of like, I don't know, it's like a synthesizer sound that almost kind of sounds like a telephone sound or something. It's like.
Are you gonna do the noise?
I wouldn't do it.
Do it.
It's like like that kind of a thing.
Yeah, totally.
Just thought that was cool. And also the sound of the sound of the the sound of the insect charm as well.
Oh yeah, that was super cool.
Yeah, I like that a lot.
And her she's John Deere lawnmower riding her glider and swinging her insect charm like a lasso. Totally,
like a lasso.
Absolutely, man. army of dragonflies flying next to her.
Yeah. No, the sound is exceptional. The sound and the visuals mixed together, just you take a amazing world, and then evidently the Joe, whatever his name is, the Joe Hisaishi guy was asked to come up with just kind of like a placeholder for this, and they were going to get some other people involved, and then he came up with the kind of concept album, and when they heard it, they were just like, holy crap, this is amazing, and that began the 30-year relationship with Miyazaki. So super cool.
Yeah.
Let's talk about the cast of the English dub version, if we can, for a second. Or I would like to just touch on it for a minute. I know that we already had our battle of the subs and dubs before, but there's some really incredible cast members in this who either were great at the time or went on to do great things. And obviously, Patrick Stewart, Edward James Olmos, Alison Lohman played Nausicaä, Uma Thurman played the evil princess. I can't remember her name. And then Chris Sarandon played the sort of douchey underling of the evil princess.
Kuratoa.
Yes, and Chris Sarandon, I think people would best know him as the antagonist in The Princess Bride.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Right? He's a great actor. And he plays a really solid evil douche, and this movie was no exception. Also, we had Mark Hamill as the leader of the Pedgites? Is that right, Chad? Didn't you say that before?
Yeah, the mayor of Pedgite. Yeah,
the mayor of Pedgite. Okay, and then also Tress MacNeille was in this. She had some.
She played Obama.
I'm pretty sure she played Obama, and
thanks, Obama.
Yeah, she's one of the sort of lesser-known unsung heroes of The Simpsons. She has played bit parts on The Simpsons for years, and she does a lot of the like the crazy old cat lady from down the street, or like, Ned Flanders, mom who's sort of losing her mind, like she does all those like kooky voices on The Simpsons, not a lot of like big characters, but she's been a fixture on The Simpsons for a long time.
It's awesome.
Also, and this was like one of my favorite finds on the cast, one of the guys that was one of the cast members, and I don't remember exactly which part he played, was Frank Welker. And he is most famous for doing the voice of Freddy on Scooby-Doo. So there you have it, folks.
Ooh, that's a nugget.
Think about that cast. We got Freddy from Scooby-Doo.
The crazy cat lady from The Simpsons.
Crazy cat lady. We have Captain Picard, Commander Adama. We have
Luke fucking Skywalker, or the Joker.
Luke Skywalker, yeah, the Bride, or Mia Wallace, whichever you like. So this is action, and then we've got Transformers boy, Shia LaBeouf.
Poor Shia LaBeouf.
So anyway, I just wanted to talk about that because I thought there was some cool little nuggets there, especially the Frank Welker thing. But anyway, cast had some great people in it. I thought the recording was a little off for a film like that, but whatever, it's still great.
Yeah, Mark Hamill was the big surprise for me, even though it's a super small part. I love that he's in it.
Yeah, but the thing about Hamill is that's when I think that was like after Jedi, this movie came out, or around that time, and that's when he was starting to get into this. And then he ended up, really, I would say the bulk of his career ended up being doing voice work. And certainly the Joker. He's now almost more famous he's as famous for the Joker as he is for Luke Skywalker.
So did you want to talk a little bit more about Mark Hamill just so you could bring Batman up and piss Benny off, or
Yep,
we can dig into that a bit, Benny? No.
The one Batman thing we can touch on is Mark Hamill doing the Joker. That's fine with me.
Okay, cool. I'm down with that.
I'm okay with that.
It's okay. He's okay.
Okay.
I kind of got the feeling that this was probably recorded in like late 90s, though. Wouldn't it have been? You're
probably right. It sounds like it was recorded in my bedroom, but
anything on the cast, Benny?
I watched a little mini doc, like a little 10-minute mini documentary that I found on YouTube, and it's like Voices of the Wind or something along those lines.
Yeah, I saw that. That was great.
But that was pretty cool to watch. All in all, I thought Chris Sarandon was terrific as Kuratoa. there's like a little spot in that documentary where he's talking about how like he was looking at the animation and like the character Kurotawa always has like this sort of sideways smirky thing going on. Like he did this thing with his mouth. He's like, yeah, I don't really know how to explain it except to show you with my mouth. And he like pulled his mouth sideways with his hands. And like, I just think his performance really captured like that character well, even if it was maybe might have been a little over the top, I guess, but it was great, I thought. And then I really liked Edward James Olmos as Mito. Like I didn't recognize him, you know. Patrick Stewart sounds like Patrick Stewart. He was great, but he sounds like Patrick Stewart, you know. And I didn't quite. It took me a minute. I was like, oh, that's Edward James Olmos. Okay, now I recognize his voice. But you know, so those are two that really stuck out at me.
Yeah, on that smirky dude, I think Over the Top was definitely the right move for him. So I'm with you on that one.
Definitely, yeah.
All right, so since we've been down 35,000 cul-de-sacs and subdivisions, why don't we rate this movie and wrap this mess up?
You got your nuggets, Chad? Your two nuggets?
And now it's time for everybody's favorite part of the show, Chad's Nuggets. I got to come up with some like 50s theme music for that. Nuggets, nuggets, it's time for Chad's Nuggets. Nuggets, nuggets, it's time for Chad's Nuggets.
I think I want you to be dead now.
I think I want you to be dead. Is that somehow different from every other week?
Yeah, fair point. Yeah, all right, I got two nuggets. I got one I'm just going to kind of wing it because it was something I wanted to bring up and I didn't, which is how much this kind of reminds me of The Expanse in a really weird way.
What?
Whoa.
Yeah, I know. It sounds really weird, but like,
since we're totally balls deep in The Expanse right now, yeah, that's
it. We're trying to get ready, but just the kind of like, there's a kind of quote that I read. I think it was talking about the manga, but it was saying that there aren't really baddies as much as they are a bunch of different groups of people thinking they're doing the right thing for them or for themselves. So like, you know, Mark Hamill's character or whatever, the Pedgites or whatever they're called, think they're doing what needs to happen to save the world, but what they're actually doing is bringing about the end of the world, you know? And it was talking about how it was like the Buddhist roots of evil, which are greed, ill will, and delusion, and fear is what's driving all the conflicts. And it really reminds me of the factions in The Expanse and how really the core of that story is how fear is causing all these people to make these horrible decisions that brings about all this really horrible shit. So, I mean, it's obviously very, very different, but it was just kind of, because we're so deep in The Expanse right now, trying to get caught up for the show, it was an interesting reminder of how fear can be an interesting element to a story.
Yeah, it's not often, I don't think, that you know, the antagonists in a film or a show are kind of what's the word I'm looking for?
Relatable?
Well, they're relatable, but they're not inherently bad. You know, they are, like, as you said, there was a word I was looking for there, and it's just not. Anyways, but yeah, it's rare when the antagonists are like relatable, and that they are just trying to do the right thing from their perspective, and they both have that. So, and I enjoy that. I enjoy when things aren't so black and white.
Yeah, it's much more realistic.
Chad, what was your other nugget?
Where the manga was written and the movie came out when there were only 3 of the issues. The manga came out monthly, evidently, as opposed to weekly. And 3 of, let's just say, 24 issues in, they make the film. And so in 1984 or whatever, the early 80s, when the film is being made, his opinion about the world and about humanity and whether he's optimistic or pessimistic is, you know, expressed in this film. And so the end of the film, you've got the kind of like Christ-like resurrection of Nausicaa, who sacrifices herself for nature, et cetera, and it's quite positive. And it turns out that the manga ran until 94, which by that time his you know, optimism kind of shifted, and the movie that he took on right after finishing the manga was Mononoke. So it's interesting to see Mononoke and Nausicaa as very similar, where, you know, Mononoke is very much humans ruining the environment and it all goes to shit. And so it's super fascinating to hear that and see that his opinion shifted in that decade and ended up with a Mononoke like dark story instead. So that was an interesting little nugget. No, it wasn't very little. It was a pretty hefty nugget, but it was interesting anyways.
No, that's a good one. I like that.
That is good.
And I'd always kind of thought of Mononoke as very similar, so it was interesting to actually hear that it was somewhat connected.
Yeah, I think something was said about there being a lot of credit given to Miyazaki for strong female leads, but switching to non-princess leads at a certain point because they were, anyways.
Lots of princesses.
Yeah, no, I get what you're saying there. Lots of princesses.
Yes.
Well, you kind of get your wish with Spirited Away.
Definitely, which is one of my other favorite Miyazaki films.
So good.
Yeah, they're great, man, but do they all have to be princesses? And then he was like, guess you're right.
Fair enough.
That kind of a thing.
I mean, it's the fact that he's bringing such strong, like, it's not even that he brings strong female leads. He just brings strong female characters, like the Uma Thurman character was fantastic. And even the antagonist in Mononoke, there's just super strong male and female characters throughout. And there's a great parody there, which was so rare. And the fact that it's 1984, it's pretty awesome. Not as awesome as that silence, though.
I gotta remember that nodding isn't a response on a podcast.
That's it. So rating, I think, is next step for us, and deaths, I suppose.
There you go. Yeah, let's rate this, review this, let's wrap this.
You want to go, Ben, or you want to wait and unleash your probability drive later?
Yeah. I'm not sure how to approach this one. My improbability drive is failing me. I've been trying to think all morning of a good one, but this might be one time where I can't really pull it together.
Let's see. Let me go first. This movie, it's the first Miyazaki movie. It was before the Ghibli. This is where the collaboration with Joe started. Great voice cast, great sound, great music, just excellent world building, great lore. What's not to like? This movie is definitely a 9. I'm keeping it short and sweet. That's it.
Like it. Very similar, Kev. Very similar. I'm 100% confident in my score, but I'm not 100% confident in the order because, the algorithm has a handful of movies that are rated pretty much the same number, at least to the first decimal point, because, it's infinite decimal points. But so almost every freaking movie that we end up talking about, I snob out on and end up giving it like a 5, which is a good movie. But according to the algorithm, a 5 is a good movie, a 6 is a really good movie, a 7 is a great movie, 8 is fantastic, and 9 is legendary. And as far as I'm concerned, there's no such thing as a 10. Nausicaa of the Valley of the Wind is a fantastic movie. And it was already on the algorithm previously, well into the top 50 films of all time for me, and is not my favorite Miyazaki, at least according to the algorithm. Mononoke is my favorite Miyazaki, which, especially considering my nugget recently, I'm going to need to revisit and watch Mononoke again just to kind of see if I still feel that way. But it's an 8.7, which is a damn high score.
Holy shit.
Equates to a 4.5 out of 5 stars. So it's a fucking great movie. And
that might be the highest ever rating popping out of the algorithm.
This is true.
On this podcast.
Except Apocalypse Now, which we did, was a 9.5. So that's a really fucking good movie. But yeah, it's an excellent film, absolutely excellent film, and it's beaten by. I'm not confident in this, so I'm kind of want to throw it out there to see what you guys think. But for me, it's beaten by Ghost in the Shell, which I think because it was so mind blowing for me with how weird it was when I was a teenager, it holds an interesting place. But it's in the neighborhood of things like Oh Brother, Interstellar, Usual Suspects, all that kind of stuff. Do you have any comments on that Ghost in the Shell slightly beating it, edging it out?
I don't because I've never seen it.
Really?
Whoa.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, I never got around to it, or I didn't have it to watch, or it wasn't available for me to watch, or whatever you want to say.
I think it's probably one of those movies that you kind of had to see in the 90s for it to have the gravity.
Full impact. Yeah, I get that. Kind of like what we've talked about. Like you've been like, oh, well, I didn't watch it when you guys watched it when you were a kid. You know what I mean? Same kind of idea. Yeah.
Right. Well, do you have any thoughts on that, Ben? The Ghost in the Shell edging it out? Do you think that's reasonable?
For me, that's not true even now. But strangely, when I first saw Ghost in the Shell, I didn't get it. It was eye candy and I liked it, but I didn't get it at all. Like, it just didn't have a very satisfying, like, it seemed like the conclusion was a nothing burger at the time.
There you go.
And so I enjoyed that somewhat, and I enjoyed the eye candy of it. I enjoyed the look of it and the feel of the movie, even though I didn't really fully understand it until later. So yeah, I don't know. It's in similar territory for sure. I think it's a great film, but it's not as good in my opinion as Nausicaa.
Yeah, I think you're probably right for sure. And I bumped Nausicaa up a few places to where it is today, but it's a very similar score. So 8.7. And thanks for letting me diatribe about it.
Totally, dude.
Yeah, great. Even with all that, I couldn't pull anything out of the improbability drive but a number, which I suppose is about as improbable as anything else. So it's just how it is. Sometimes when I really love this movie, and I feel close to it, and I probably didn't say enough about it because so much wanted to come out. It was like a blockage, and maybe we can, I don't know, revisit later at some point. This is like, it's such a great film, and it's one of my favorite Miyazaki films. And I would gather that most Miyazaki films are going to come out really high for me, because there's something he brings to the table that nobody else does, and animated or not, his movies are just beautiful. So I'm giving this a 9, a very big solid 9, maybe even a 9.5.
Nice. I like that.
I love it.
I'm looking forward to hopefully doing some more Miyazaki films in the future.
Oh man, you guys want to do all the Arnolds? I want to do all the Miyazakis.
Yeah, well, I think we should do them all. I really do. And I'm going to have a hard time every time because there's so much I want to talk about that I get clammed up.
Totally. You give Verklempt.
Verklempt.
No, I'm stoked you brought this one to the table, Benny. It's a great film.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And I like, it's a little bit of a departure from what we normally do, so I'm into that as well.
I think you should go out there and watch it. Make it so.
Yes. Let's talk about the deaths real quick, because we had a really epic 3-way death.
Oh yeah, the murder death kills. What was that about?
We had a murder death kill,
mustache,
and that was all about the mustaches.
That was a good death. I like that death.
That was a really good death.
I did the Star Wars death again. I don't recall if you died, Ben, but maybe the lack of the improbability drive is a death.
That's definitely...
That's kind of got to be a little bit of a death for Benny, for sure. Because that's like his hook.
I kind of thought you were going to be like, it's 3 out of 4 gun-shaped gunships.
That's what I thought. I was thinking like, I don't know, something about ohms, actually,
It's none of it felt right.
It's 9.5 out of 10 Num Shivais.
Hey.
Yeah, it's almost like I would have wanted to say, like, this doesn't make any sense, but it's one perfectly intact found ohm shell.
I like that. That's really good.
I like that too, yeah.
Because ohm shell rating would only be one perfectly intact one, which is a perfect score, or, bits less. But it almost doesn't make sense. You know what I'm saying? It's a tough one.
All Miyazaki films rate one perfectly intact ohm eyeball.
No, the entire shell.
Oh, the whole carapace. I like it.
Yeah.
Kev, how did you die?
I died in the 3-way murder death kill, which is epic. And then there was another comment that I made that definitely bombs, because I remember you saying, yep, you're dead. Yeah. Or something to that effect. And there you have it.
We're all dead. Everybody's dead. Zed's dead.
Everybody's dead.
Now it's time for one of my favorite parts of the show. Algorithm, what do we have coming up next?
The Expanse, I think.
Yeah, it is. I don't need to ask you. Next week, folks, we have our conclusion of the beginning of the epic space opera, The Expanse. So we're going to be covering seasons 3 and 4. So definitely stay tuned for that. That's going to be fun and exciting. And I just want to say from all of us to all of you, thanks so much for joining us, folks. And we'll see you another time.
See ya.
Ciao.
And that's going to wrap up this week's episode, folks. Thanks for joining us. Next week, we're going to be talking about seasons 3 and 4 of the hit space opera, The Expanse. So please join us for that. You can find the show notes for today's episode in your podcast app of choice. We're at our website, ebd.fm/episodes/45. You can shoot us questions using the Twitter hashtag AskEBD. You can find me at Moverine on Twitter. That's MOHLVERINE. Chad is at Chad Normal on Twitter. And Ben is at Jarhigo on Twitter. That's JARHEEGO. I'd like to take a second, thank everybody, as always, for tuning into the show. It means so much to me and the boys. And if you'd like to support the show, there's a couple great ways you can do that. First is by rating and reviewing us on iTunes or wherever you get your podcasts. Or you can tell someone to check out the show. Word of mouth is incredibly powerful and incredibly effective. Thanks so much for joining us, folks. We'll see you next time.